Good morning, everyone. Let me make sure this chat is pulled up here. All right. Let's let a couple folks jump on here. Let's head in the community. I'll be ready here in just a second, I promise. Copy. Okay, good morning. All right, so where do we begin this morning? First, we begin with a nice sip of coffee. Okie doke. So, I thought this morning we would. There were a couple of questions from the previous week, from last Sunday morning. So I thought we would address some of those questions. And let me jump to, I don't know where I even put that. I'm a little bit of a mess this morning. Slept in a little too late. All right. So yeah, last week we talked about talking to sellers. This is a topic I think we could probably fill every single Sunday morning, especially for a lot of new folks. We could probably fill every Sunday morning with talking to sellers. And so one of the questions that there's a series of questions that we had, but one of the main issues that a lot of people have is I don't think when a lot of people go and talk to sellers, they don't build the rapport that's necessary. They don't build rapport with their sellers. They go in, they have particularly a lot of new people, they'll go to an appointment and they are just they're singularly focused on getting a contract, getting the property under contract, or and they're just not really. Hold on one second here. They're just not really focused on the things that they need to be focused on, which is building rapport. So I'm going to go through a series of questions here. These are four separate questions that I had from last week's Q&A, and I can tell you that this is the way that I handle these situations. But I will tell you the underlying problem, rather, with any of these questions is that there's not enough rapport being built. Okay, that's just how it is. That's just I'm just going to lay it on the line there. That's exactly what is going on here. So first, before we even get to these questions, don't forget, if you're watching this or if you watch this later on a replay, and you like what's going on, like what we're talking about, go ahead and if you would, subscribe to the channel. Give it a like, all that good stuff. I think most people know how to do that these days, so I'm not going to harp on it. But let's get into the questions here. So first, before we get into those questions, let me just say that your strategy for talking to sellers is one where you are asking the questions. Okay, first of all, every question that a seller has for you is it's like a micro objection. Every question is an objection. So the way you handle that is you quickly answer that question, answer your seller's question, and then you immediately fire off your own questions. Right? That's just that is that's controlling the conversation. All right. So how do you do that? How do you where do you come up with your questions? Well, no conversation. I mean, you could ask my wife this. No conversation that I've ever had, either on the phone or even at an appointment, has ever gone as planned. Never. I would sit and pace my floors when I'm, if I'm on a seller call or something like that, I would sit and pace my floors. I would walk back and forth, and I would have this whole pre-constructed conversation in my brain. But when I got on the phone, that conversation never happened that way. It never did, ever. I can't remember one conversation where it went exactly as planned. So how you handle these calls and these appointments is that you have to have a framework for the appointment. You don't have to have the appointment entirely scripted out. And this is what took me so long to finally figure out, is you have to have a framework. You have to have a, when you go to a seller appointment, you have got to have a steps that you take. So for instance, when I go to a seller appointment, I immediately, I make my pleasantries. I knock on the door. I step back a couple feet as to not be, kind of in their space. But introduce yourself. And if you're an independent person, you're not with a company. I prefer to go that route. I really like to be. I don't like to. That would be what I would call faking it till you make it. I like to be very personable, very upfront with my sellers, shake their hand, and then ask them, you're going to have a little bit of small talk there. Ask them if they would take you to, in our case, we go to the basement. We have basements in our neck of the woods. And that's where all of the large utilities are taken. So that's where I start. So I have them walk me through the house, if at all possible. I really like to have them kind of guide me to where they want me to be, but I do like to start in the basement. So if you have a framework about how a specific steps on what you're going to do at each and every appointment, you're eventually just going to become much more comfortable with every single conversation. And so then you just start getting in your reps. So that framework might look like kind of what I just told you, how we start off our conversations with our sellers at our sellers appointments. It's basically go up, knock on the door. Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm here to take a look at the house, and would you mind guiding me through the house, and let's talk about things. And that's really it. It's just a framework. It's just steps. Like I said, your conversation is never going to go the way that you think it is. So let's jump into this first question. And these are objections, is what they are. That's all there is to it. There's no, people are going to be very skeptical of you, especially if you come in this is why I like to go in as an independent buyer. All right. I don't like to come in representing some big company. That's just my personal preference. I find that people get kind of scared, especially if they think that you aren't local. If you're not local, it's going to be, it's a tough thing to approach. So the first question I had here is, a seller might ask you, what company do you work for, and how do I know it's legitimate? All right. So valid question, because they are feeling, they're trying to feel you out is what they're trying to do. And they're trying to make sure that, obviously they don't want to be scammed. And particularly, again, I'm going to kind of pick on wholesalers a little bit today, but there's a lot of wholesalers out there that have burned sellers. And so, it's a tough business. Wholesaling is a dog-eat-dog business. And there's just no two ways about it. It is a cutthroat business. All right. So some of these sellers may have been burned before, where, maybe they've maybe they've signed a contract with a wholesaler, and that wholesaler's left them high and dry. Hope that doesn't happen, but sometimes it just happens, particularly it's very common with new wholesalers that maybe don't know how to run those comps and really pull accurate values of these properties. So one of the ways to kind of get around this objection is, first of all, you need to probably have an authority website built. It's not a requirement, but it does it. What it does is allows them to go out and allows your seller to go out and look you up, look up your company, and do kind of their own research on their own. Right? You can use a simple WordPress website. I think Google Sites is free. You could use Google Sites. There are some CRMs obviously out there with built-in websites. I use REI Blackbook for mine. Carrot has a bunch of sites. There's lead pages. There's all kinds of things you can, all kinds of site builders that you can use to build an authority site, and that's really all that you need. It can even be one of these single page sites with very little. You can maybe have an about section. You can have kind of what you do. It doesn't have to be super technical. You're just going to create a site that is easy to read, tells everyone in the world exactly what you do, and that's it. Have some pictures, some videos. This is not going to be a lesson on how to build an authority site, but there's plenty of material out there that you can, that you can read and gain some knowledge on how to build these sites. So if you're still having issues, still getting presented with this question of what company do you work for and how do I know it's legitimate, I would recommend, especially if you're starting out, I don't actually use this anymore. I've kind of I've perfected my spiel, right? But build a credibility kit. What does somebody who doesn't have any credibility do? You have to try and build that. So you build a credibility kit. And so what I do, I should have put one together for you here, but I didn't do that. But I have a stack of folders that I had printed off of. I think I had them printed off of Vistaprint or something like that. But it's a stack of folders. It's got my company name on the front of the folder, and in that credibility kit, I will have my agreements it's on the right side of the folder. So I have my agreements on the right side of the folder, which would be my purchase agreement. I never try and keep any of my agreements, secret or I'm very transparent with my agreements. And that's another thing. If you're gonna put agreements in your credibility kit, meaning like your purchase agreement or maybe an affidavit, something like that, property inspection forms. If you're going to put those in your credibility kit, those have to be available. In fact, I leave my credibility kits with my sellers. If I don't happen to get that contract that day, I leave it with them so that they can go through each one of those agreements and pick it apart and ask me questions about it. So on the right side of my folder, I have my purchase agreements. I have any addendums, and these are all blank. None of these are filled out. I have a property inspection form, which is a big one, right? Because if you're walking through a house and you have a property inspection template that you use on every property, you can go through and you can mark everything on that. As you're walking through the house, that is, you can mark everything on that property inspection form that you find, and you leave that entire credibility kit with your seller so they know, they can see, well, these are the things that need to be addressed, and maybe you don't get the contract that day, but at least they know what you saw. So you need to be pretty thorough with that. And then I put a business card. My folders have little slots, right? Where you can put a business card. So I put a business card in there. And then on the left side of the folder, I will put a proof of funds letter if you have one. I put a stack. So I will pull at least 3 sold comparables, and I'll print those out before the appointment. I will staple each one of those individual comps together. Those go on the left-hand side. And then I jumped in Microsoft Publisher and I created a trifold brochure that basically it's kind of just mirrors what the website says. But yeah, those are a quick credibility kit. There's plenty of information out there on how to build a credibility kit and what you put in. It doesn't have to be super crazy. That's what a lot of people think, that their credibility kits need to be, that they need to be like these big, orchestrated professional types of credibility kits. It's just not true. Simply showing up with a folder and being prepared, automatically you have a little bit of credibility there. So what company do you work for, and how do I know it's legitimate? Those are just a couple of ideas. Preferably, I would prefer to have that information, maybe make that a part of your phone call. Hey, you can go out to this website. You can go out to my website and kind of check out what we do. That way, when you get to the appointment, you don't even have to, you're not going to be dealing with that question. All right. All right. So the second question I got was, how did you get my number? So this would be probably for you cold callers out there. And there's no way around this. You just got to be honest. Now, obviously you want to be honest throughout this, throughout your entire dealings with your seller. Okay. You want to be honest. That's just a given. But being honest doesn't mean that you give away all of your information. It doesn't mean that you give them, it's more about what you leave out than what you put in. So really the simple answer to this question is tell them you looked it up online. That's pretty easy. Not that hard to do. And if they ask where online, there's plenty. You can just do a Google search for someone's name and there's going to be plenty. There's been verified, be plenty of results out there. Been verified, True People Search, all of those, all of those tools that are free, and all you have to do is use the Google to find it. All right. So that one's a real simple answer to that question. All right. Here's a question that, let me make sure I'm not missing anything here. Okay. All right. So this is one that I constantly get bombarded with this question, but it's, can you show me proof that you can buy the house with cash? So this is I automatically know this is a wholesaler. So I'll just tell you that we don't necessarily make the promise that we're going to buy with cash. We're creative investors, so we use our motto. In fact, in our coaching program is think creative first. So we're always going to try and to make the seller our financier first of all. That's the first thing we do. And so if you're a wholesaler and you're advertising that you can buy a house with cash, then you might get this question. Show me proof of funds, basically, that you can buy with cash. I will tell you, I mean, I at one point in my career, I thought I wanted to be, make wholesaling one of my primary sources of income. And I just didn't care for the job. It was literally, that was just too much like a job. So, but I can tell you that whether it was wholesaling or it was, just going in as your average buyer, I have never, ever been asked that question. Not one time, unless it's been by an agent. Agents will ask you that because that's kind of what they're taught. But if that's the case, if you are asked that question, particularly by an agent, I don't know, obviously you're going to have different sources of funding, but first of all, I'm upfront. All right. I do not let my sellers think for a second that this cash that's coming is coming from my personal bank account. I never tell them that, ever. It's just not. You're setting yourself up for failure, is what's happening, and it's just not honest. And I like to be honest. I like to leave a seller appointment knowing that I was honest and that I feel good on what I did, even if I don't get the deal. Sellers can see through a lot of your garbage. All right. So just be honest with them. But so I will tell them, hey, look, especially if it's an agent, they're going to understand this. I tell them that, hey, my funds come from private lenders. It's really tough for me to ask a private lender for a copy of their bank statement, right? I mean, and that's the truth. I have tons of private lenders, but I'm not going to go out and ask my private lenders for their bank statements. But I am going to let the agent know or the seller know, hey, look, I got to say this delicately, but I let them know that basically none of these so-called cash buyers, none of them, I won't say none, very, very few are actually using their own money. And a lot of folks are misrepresenting themselves by letting sellers know that they're using their own cash. And that's just not the way I like to do business. So I let them know up front that, anybody that walks through this house, you could probably bet that 90 to 95% of them are sourcing their funds outside of their own bank accounts. Right. So yeah, I just like to be honest about it and be upfront about it. And like I said, a lot of my funds come from private lenders. So I just let them know that I can't go out and ask my private lenders, hey, can you send me a copy of your bank statement? It's just, I suppose you could do that. I don't do that, but that's just an odd conversation to have with a private lender. The real problem here, though, is that your focus is on, like I said before, your focus is on getting the contract. And that's not where your focus should be. When you go to a seller appointment, your focus has to be on building trust and rapport. That's all there is to it. That's the reason I have never, ever been asked by a seller to show proof of funds. I've never been asked that question. And it's because I try and be personable. I try to get personal with them, ask really good questions. And like, I'm going to go back to last week's conversation, which is, when you go to this seller appointment, building trust and rapport is just, that is what's going to get that contract. It has nothing to do with, it has very little to do with what you're actually offering. People have to like you first. They must like you first. All right. If that's still a problem, if you've got, you've built great rapport, but again, maybe the seller's been burned before. Maybe they signed a contract with someone but they've been burned. So they may still ask you this question. So one thing you might do here is go ahead and get pre-qualified with a hard money lender, a local hard money lender, if you can. All right. You can even, if you like this, I've actually done this with a hard money lender, a local one here in my market. And I've actually written the letter myself. I've written the letter myself and I reached out to a couple of hard money lenders and I said, hey, I've got a letter here. I'd like to get pre-approved with you. My sellers are asking for a pre-approval letter. So would you mind signing off on this? Or can you give me some pointers on how to build this letter? And hard money lenders are just a great resource for a lot of things, particularly home values. They have personal skin in the game a lot of the time. And so they have a lot of value. Local hard money lenders do. So I would recommend getting pre-qualified through a local hard money lender. Now, I've never really had to use that letter, but unless it was an agent, I have had a couple agents that would ask for that. Like I said before, that's what they're trained to do. And so it's best to be prepared. So that, I hope that helps with the show me proof of funds type of question that you get. The next question I got was, what's your full name and company address? Well, again, I have found in my market and just kind of the way I deal with sellers, I have found it much easier just to go in as an independent buyer. Now I may advertise depending on how, I run Google ads, I run TV ads. So it may be that they're expecting me to come in and be representing this company with this, all dressed up and, have my logo and all that. I don't do any of that stuff. I go in as just a regular Joe buyer. That's really it. I like to be. It allows me to get more personal with them. Somebody is going. If you're going to talk to a seller, it's going to be a whole lot easier to build trust and rapport if you're not representing a company. And that's just the way that I do it. That's the way that I look at that situation, and it actually relieves me of a lot of pressure of having to build up all this credibility and everything. So the first thing I would recommend is go in as an independent buyer. You're just someone, you've got this company, but you're really just coming in as an independent buyer. It's going to lift the pressure off you to represent that company. It's going to make them feel better. You're going to be able to build that rapport a whole lot faster. All right. If that doesn't suffice, then I would never give out my home address. I don't do that in any situation. But you can get a UPS box. I wouldn't get a PO box, like from the U.S. Postal Service. I would get a UPS box and just give them that mailing address. I mean, I think it's probably not that serious of a question. What's your full name and company address? But also you can send them to your authority site. They can find all this information out on your authority site. So yeah, I don't think it's that serious. What else? We got any questions going on here? Okay. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and dump it in the chat there, and be happy to. I think you do. Yeah, you do have to be subscribed to ask questions, but go ahead and dump it in the chat there, and we'll get your questions answered. What else have we got here? Let's take a look. Hold on just one second. Let me add a couple of other questions here. Hold on here. I believe this individual's name was Brian. I'm not sure if he's on the call today, but question was asked. So we give a whole packet of contracts away, and they're basically the ones that we get asked for the most, that we just kind of package them up. You can find those out at Sub2Empire. But I don't even know how to say this word, to be honest with you. But the username was Aberrant Art. Maybe I'm showing my ignorance. I really don't know what aberrant means, but hey, you do, so good for you. But he said he just downloaded the documents on our website. So what's the difference between your agreement to sell and the purchase agreement? And when to use one versus the other? Okay. That could be a little confusing, I admit. But to answer your question, if you go out and download those documents, the purchase agreement is on the buy side. When we're going out to buy a property, we have our purchase agreement. Okay. The agreement to sell is what we call it is what we also call that our lock in our buyer agreement. Lock in our buyer. So if we're doing a double closing, for example, we will use the purchase agreement to buy the property. And when if we're going to sell that property and double close it, maybe we're just going to flip it, we will use the agreement to sell. So that's what those two. I know it's confusing. They look they look very similar, but if you read through those documents, you will see that there are some. The purchase agreement is constructed a whole lot differently from the agreement, our selling agreement. All right. And the second question he had was, what is indemnification and hold harmless agreement? Well, there's indemnification and hold harmless are kind of two different. They mean two different things. An indemnification agreement is an agreement where there can be monetary. You can be awarded monetary damages. Okay, that is generally the wording in an indemnification agreement. All right, hold harmless is there are non-monetary. How can I say that this morning? Non-monetary compensation in a hold harmless agreement. So we just can kind of combine those both, and just to let people know, hey, we can, you can't sue us. We can. Well, I won't say that. You can sue us. I don't even want to get into the legal side of this, but just know that that's what that is. Indemnification is there can be monetary awards, and hold harmless is generally a non-monetary award agreement. All right, that's all that it means. If you want to know more about that, go out and use the Google and find that information out. All right. Tatiana has a question about Sub2. Can you go ahead and type that in the chat there, Tatiana? I don't know how much of a delay there is. Let's see here. All right, she says, I have a duplex with inherited tenants. The lease agreement has a clause that the contract can be terminated when the property is sold. I didn't exercise this right when I bought the property. Now I really want to get rid of a tenant whose lease is up in December 2023. Well, that is a really great question. And first, I do want to I want to make sure that you understand I'm not an attorney, and this is all going to depend upon the state and the county that you're in, because now you're going to have state landlord tenant laws that every county has to comply with, but it's sort of like, they don't necessarily. For example, we had all this COVID stuff, right? So I have St. Louis County here. We have St. Louis City, which is not part of St. Louis County. And those two jurisdictions, those two municipalities, or well, they'd be jurisdictions. Those two jurisdictions handle COVID very, very differently. So it doesn't mean that just because there's a state law that it's not interpreted by one county the same as it's interpreted by another. Okay, so the real answer to that question is I would talk to an attorney about that. I'm sorry I can't really advise on that because I don't know exactly where this is taking place, and I can really only speak for my market, and even then, there are nuances. So I would talk to an attorney about that for sure. Find a really good eviction attorney. The best way to find a really good eviction attorney is, guess what? It's to show up to eviction court and find the attorneys that are just doing the most business. They're just, they're rolling through, and they've got case after case after case. That's the best eviction attorney you're gonna find. Other than that, probably be word of mouth. Probably wouldn't Google eviction attorneys, but you can. But I know that seems like kind of a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I really can't answer that. I can tell you in my market in St. Louis that we're pretty landlord friendly state, and so I don't want to say that we can evict people for no reason, because we can't, but we do not have a problem if a tenant does break their lease in any way, whether that be through non-payment or through destroying the property or whatever. We can generally get around and get a tenant evicted pretty quickly. So again, go ahead and check with your with a local attorney there. All right. I wanted to say, again, not legal advice here, but you should still be able to, if what you're telling me is that the lease agreement can be terminated when the property is sold, it sounds like you have that option. It sounds like you have the ability. Doesn't really matter. I guess I don't understand. She says, Jeff, my question was about the sub 2 part. I guess I'm a little confused on this question. Are you saying that since you bought it sub 2, you're thinking, maybe I can piece this together. Are you thinking that since you bought it subject to, that you might that there might be some kind of problem with that being considered a sale? Oh man, I'm really sorry. I don't. I hope maybe that's what it is. I'll just tell you that this is a sale, so don't even if your question is whether or not it would be considered a sale as to whether or not you can evict someone, then this is 100% a sale. If you truly bought it subject to, where you have taken title to the property, then yes, that is a sale. That would trip that clause in your contract. I hope that answers your question. Can you give me a thumbs up or a yes or a no, and let me know if that's kind of where you were headed on that? There we go. Good deal. Perfect. So yes, that makes me feel a little bit better. Yes, this is absolutely a sale. And in fact, you may know this already, but you can look on line 203 or line 503 on a HUD-1 settlement statement, and you can see that you will be able to find 203 is going to be the seller side of the HUD-1. 503 would be the buyer side. There are provisions for buying houses subject to, for buying and selling subject to. So this is a sale. Title's changing hands. You're good to go. All right. All right. I'm going to give anybody else that has a question, give you about 10 or 15 seconds here. If you want to jump in, go right ahead. I think that was all of the questions that we had here. All right, guys, I think that's going to be it today. If there's no other questions, then I'm going to go ahead and end it. Just a quick reminder, if you're visiting the channel and you're not subscribed, please go ahead and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're going to do these every Sunday morning. So, I get a kick out of it. I like doing it. And, I'm going to continue to do it. I just like to talk. I like talking about this stuff. So, also, if you have not joined our private community yet, there is a link in the description of this video. It's a bio link, but we're kind of trying to take people get our people out of the public domains like Facebook and things like that, and get them into private. Problems that we have with Facebook are that we have to really, really monitor what anybody says inside our group. I mean, they'll shut our group down like that, and it's very, very hard to get those turned back on. You generally have to, if somebody posts something in there that's controversial or offensive, or we just don't have those problems in the private community. So if you go to community.sub2empire.com, you can sign up there. And also, I've decided, I think we're just gonna stick with it gets too complicated. I'm trying to get some of the complication out of my life, and I'm just gonna stick with YouTube on these streams. It's one of the easier things to do, and I can post those. We can post those links everywhere. So post links to these lives. So, all right, folks, that's it. I appreciate it. Enjoy your Sunday. Have a good one. We'll see you next week. All right. Take care.